There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the fuck do I give a shit about burning the fucking Football Hall of Fame, about burning a fucking Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a fuck. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own, our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so fuck your Target. Fuck your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they can burn this bitch to the ground.
Anti-police sentiment is quite high right now. It is actually very trendy on the internet. I've seen a lot of this on Instagram and Twitter. There is a lot of talk and comments about how all cops are bastards. In fact, there is an acronym for this. ACAB. ACAB. All cops are bastards. And there is a term that is very trendy on Twitter, F the police. That's very popular. F12, that's another one. All of these are about hating the police and how the police are the problem. Cops are the problem. Police officers are racists, and there are a lot of memes about how cops are just modern day Klans members. They're just members of the KKK, so to speak. This is, for one thing, it's extremely delusional. There's a lot of delusion in the people who talk this way. It's just a lot of inconsistencies and contradictions. All cops are bastards. Well, when you look at the statistics, there's really no support for the claims of these lunatics. In 2019, police officers killed over 1,000 people. Massacre. It's genocide. Systematic racism. Specific systematic oppression of minorities, black and brown folk. How many of that 1,000 were black? Out of the 1,000 or so people killed by cops in 2019, 235 of those were black. So cops in 2019 killed over 1,000 people. 235 of those were black. And those 235 people were, for the most part, either armed or they were otherwise dangerous in some other form. They had a knife. They had some sort of weapon. If you look at these numbers, there's no sign of, systematic, specific targeting of black folk. It's just not there. It's like when people talk bad about the Spanish Inquisition. They say, oh, the Spanish Inquisition, it was tyranny, despotism, Spanish fascism. Killed 30 million people, 33,000 people killed by the Spanish Inquisition. And then you look at the numbers, and then you look at the amount of years that the Spanish Inquisition existed, and you find out, oh, the Spanish Inquisition lasted over 300 years, and 3,000 people were killed under the Spanish Inquisition. There's no sign of wanting genocide in those facts, in those numbers. A regime that wants to just kill tens of thousands of people or millions of people isn't going to kill 3,000 people in over 300 years. And then you look at the number of blacks killed, the number of unarmed blacks, right? Let's look at those numbers, because if the police are so racist, you would find just dead black people everywhere, just shot for no reason, out of nowhere, just killed. In 2019, how many unarmed blacks were killed by police? 9. That's it. 9 unarmed black people, African Americans, were killed by police in 2019. How many unarmed whites were killed by cops in 2019? 19. So if you want to use those numbers to prove some sort of specific systematic oppression, specific particular targeting of all black folks, black and brown minority folks, I mean, if this is your argument, 9 unarmed people, then the alt-right, white supremacist, eugenist, social Darwinist Nazis, they also can use this sort of argumentation and say, well, the system is targeting white people. And in fact, the whole idea of modern-day governments, modern-day Western governments, specifically targeting white people, this is extremely rampant within right-wing fanatic circles. This whole idea of Western governments specifically targeting white people. So they can also take your form of argumentation and use it for their own cause. And this is one thing that makes it so dangerous, is you have this hysteria and delusion amongst the black separatist, or these are Afrocentric activists. You have these types of people on one side, and then you have the alt-right fascist on the other side, and they're both filled with delusion and hysteria. There's just so much hysteria. One side says there is a systematic system of oppression of black people, and then you have the other side saying, well, there's white genocide. And both sides are filled with delusion. It makes you wonder why people like Elijah Muhammad were working with the American Nazis. Both delusional. And then you have talk about policing our own people. We don't need no white folks coming in here with their guns and badges policing us. We can police ourselves. Don't need no white boys with the uniforms coming over here. And so there's a lot of talk on the internet from Afrocentric fanatics about how police officers should leave black neighborhoods, and black neighborhoods should just police themselves. Well, if you do that, you end up with the Ferguson effect. A lot of cops left Ferguson after the riots, and crime went up. It's actually terrible for the poor. It's amazing. Well, this is one thing that I've noticed studying reactionary movements, rebellious, revolutionary, anti-government movements. This is one thing I've noticed. They say that they are fighting to protect a certain people, be it blacks, be it the peasants, be it the working class, whatever. And then when they get what they want, they end up hurting the very people that they claimed to be fighting for, that they claim to have been fighting for. We saw this in the French Revolution. The rebels claimed, the Jacobins, the Enlightenment philosophers, they wanted equality for all, and they wanted to help the peasantry against the evil royalists and the evil monarchy. And the majority of the people who were killed under the French Reign of Terror were the peasants. The peasants were the ones who suffered the most. Syrian Revolution. Bashar al-Assad is an evil regime. The regime is evil, despotic tyranny. It's tyranny. And you had people who were supporting the Syrian Revolution who then switched sides to support Bashar al-Assad because they saw the terrible savagery of the rebels and of the anti-Bashar al-Assad fighters. And whatever tyranny came out of Bashar al-Assad's regime was horrendously dwarfed by the Islamic terrorists who were against him and who are still against him. Like, for example, taking poor farmers into the farmhouse and savagely executing all of them. Yeah, this was one particular event that took place in Syria during the Civil War. And I remember seeing the video of it, and to this day, I can't get rid of the images in my head. Like, it was horrific what happened. Libya is another great example. Oh, Gaddafi is horrible, he's a horrible tyrant. And they got rid of Gaddafi, and it was a hell of a lot worse. So if you get rid of all the cops, because the cops are evil and pigs and want to just target black people for no reason, then, and you want to police yourselves, then, I mean, what you're essentially asking for is separatism. You want to make your own state. And that's not going to happen. But if it did happen, well, let's just take one argument here. Let's take your logic, your ACAB, all cops are bastards are logic. Let's take your logic and let's apply it to what you're talking about. So, cops are all bastards, right? They're all evil, they're racist, they're basically Klans members, they're KKK, whatever, pigs, whatever you want to call them. They're evil, right? And cops are the problem. So your solution is to get rid of cops. Okay. So police officers are really bad. Who are the cops, right? Cops are humans, right? Cops are a product of their society. They're a product of our American society. So the people who commit police brutality, those people were already problematic before even entering the police force. It's like the priests who molest boys or they pray after teenagers. Those people were perverted before they even entered the priesthood. So it's not really the problem isn't really the institution of the police. The problem is people from the society. Like they are products of their society, and so whatever state the society is in, it's going to reflect in its institutions, be it the government, be it the police. So let's say you get rid of the cops because the cops are the problem, and the black people, black neighborhoods, they just police themselves. Okay. So since we can agree that bad cops, bad apples, they're just products of their society, let's look at the number of homicides, black homicides, in the year 2018. In the year 2018, there were over 7,400 blacks that were killed by other blacks. So if you guys policed yourselves, what kind of cops are you going to have? Because if bad cops are simply products of their society, and obviously the black community has a lot of problems with homicides, gang violence, what kind of cops are you guys going to have? It would be tremendously worse. And the ones who would suffer, who would be the people most devastated by this policy? Who would be the people who would suffer the most under your own corrupt cops? Your, village cop watch. It would be the poor. In fact, if you got rid of the police, I'm willing to bet that the people who would suffer the most would be the poor. Because the rich would just buy their own cops. Perfect example, South Africa. South Africa has an extremely, extremely high murder rate, one of the highest in the world. The police in South Africa are ridiculously corrupt. In fact, they say that if you call the cops, let's say your house is getting robbed in South Africa and you call the government cops will just come in and help the robbers out. That's what I heard. It really is that bad. The cops are so unreliable in South Africa and so corrupt that rich people living in South Africa, they got their own mercenaries to watch over them. They can't rely on the cops. South Africa has the biggest private security industry in the world for this reason. And who in South Africa suffers the most? It's not the rich. They got their own cops. They got their own private police. It's the poor. So the people who these Afrocentrists are claiming to be fighting for, they're claiming to be fighting for the poor. They're claiming to be fighting for poor black and brown folks. These people that they claim to be fighting for would be the ones who would suffer the most if their fantasy of getting rid of the cops ever manifested. It really is an interesting paradigm. The ones that these people claim to be fighting for would be the ones who would suffer the most if these rebels ever got their way. And that's actually the case every time these types of people get their way, be it the French Revolution, be it Libya, be it Syria, be it Iraq. The Spanish Civil War is another great example. Oh, evil Franco, he's evil tyrant, he's evil, he's fascista. But then you look at all the massacres committed by those very people who were complaining about Franco. Pretty horrendous. Anyway, yeah, just wanted to give you guys some of my thoughts on this subject. Hope you guys have learned something. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.